Welcome to Chasing Kona. We're here at RunLab Austin. This is a place we're collaborating with to help work on my inefficiencies and my injuries, or my root cause of what's been causing my lack of form or lack of efficiency in my running specifically. For those of you new to the channel, I broke my neck 5 months ago almost now. It's early December. I've got titanium plates in my neck, and this is an important time because we are 20 weeks out from Ironman Texas, a race which I hope to qualify for the World Championships in Kona, Hawaii next year. Next week I'm going to Adelaide, Australia to train with some other triathletes for 3 to 4 weeks. We'll bring you along for that ride as well. But this is a really great time for this week and next week for RunLab to take a look at all of the ways in which I can improve. And yeah, excited to show you what it's all about. I think you guys can learn a lot and gain a lot of value from things that you maybe never thought about in the way you run. Let's get inside.
Dr. Murray?
All right, Mike, nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Pablo.
Howdy.
Nice to
Pablo,
meet
you
you.
said?
Yeah, nice
Good to meet you. We'll be hopping in one of these treatment rooms as we chat and kind of get you evaluated today. And then we'll be spending time in here later. This is the filming room. This is where most of the action. So general flow for today, like we were chatting about before.
Yeah.
It's kind of like data collection day. So we sit and chat, figure out what you got going on.
Cool.
Kind of chat about the journey that you're on, get an idea of what goals we should be setting our sights on. And then see how you're built, see how you're moving. That'll be part of the physical exam that we conduct today.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's based on specific injuries or problem spots that you've got. Maybe that's just based on your anatomy as somebody who's trying to run, trying to do an Ironman, trying to do a lot, right?
Sure. Probably
and-
a combination.
Yeah, right, exactly. As is often the case for folks who are active or embarking on this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Old injuries, newer injuries, stuff like that. We'll hopefully cover all of it. And then we will transition into the filming room. So we'll take you through a couple tests in there, grab a couple videos, including the filming of you running. Ideally today, we have enough time for filming something like easy long endurance pace for you,
Sure.
and then something closer to race pace or maybe a workout pace, so we
Mhm.
can see what the form looks like at different speeds for you.
Absolutely.
And then, so we capture all that today. Then the filming would conclude our session today. We get it all analyzed. That involves a couple pieces. So one of our Gait analysts will go over it. They generate a report, which will you've maybe even seen an example for, but we'll glance at one. It's basically like a multi-page PDF that shows you a few meters
Okay.
about like what you're doing well, what you're doing less well, how that potentially relates to injury risk
Mhm.
or inefficiency. And there will be a 10 or so minute long video that has your slow-mo pulled up and has them drawing lines, drawing angles, basically describing everything that appears in the report. So it really puts some meat on the bones for all the jargon and
Super helpful.
all the angles, etc. Like instead of just looking at meters, you're like actually seeing you running.
Yeah, I'm a visual learner.
And then at the next appointment, which we call the follow-up, we'll recap on that. So likely you'll have some questions, right? We'll recap on that, answer all those questions, kind of work our way through the report, talk through that video, especially from the lens of how we're going to start working on it. Have you ever been in physical therapy before?
I have. I'm currently in physical therapy 3 times a week for
Okay,
a broken neck. I broke my C5, 6, 7 in a cycling accident in
Yeah.
July.
Okay. I knew just a tiny bit about that. I'm sure we will continue to relate.
Yeah,
to a lot of detail
I'd
on
love
that.
for you just to know so we can see. I'm sure it's a combination of everything you said. Probably my age and I'm getting tighter. The fact that I'm a triathlete and I'm in a hunched position a lot. My anterior is really
Yeah.
crunched and tightened. And I'm probably doing not enough work on that, but I love that we're going to do something like this. It's really going to open my eyes about why it might cause some problems, because I am fortunate that I've only been in endurance sports. I was a soccer player, but I've only been in endurance for about 15 months now.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful, other than the cycling accidents, I'm thankful to never have had an injury running.
Okay.
But I'm sure I'm doing something inefficient and striking somewhere I shouldn't be. So I think this is going to be really helpful.
Cool. Right on.
And also just want to hear from you, like, I've definitely noticed now that I'm getting videoed quite often, I'm able to see how my form has changed significantly just from the broken sternum and neck injury and how it's affecting everything from my thoracic, even how I swing.
Yeah.
And probably some of it just mental of how I'm just being protective.
Yeah, definitely. Recovery from something like that does take a while, and some of that is psychological, like I said. Some of that will, I'm sure, continue to be physical. But even on top of that, being relatively new to the world of endurance sports, you'll have an athletic background, and you'll have even like a fitness background from soccer, which I'm sure will go a tremendously long way in helping be your base to build on for this. But you almost have what I'd consider a slight advantage of almost like a blank slate. So getting ahead of these things, like people rarely talk about form, people rarely are coached on form. Sometimes even in the short distance or speed world, or even when people are coached, usually gets distilled down to like a couple cues, right? It's like, all right, we can look at the pros and then we try to mimic the pros. It's like, well, it's like there's a lot that goes into that.
Right.
So you, before you build up to a crazy amount of volume, you hopefully have fewer bad habits that you will then need to unlearn before you learn.
That's
new
also
habits.
I hadn't thought about it quite in that way, and that makes sense. People probably come in here maybe after they get injured or something.
Yeah, right. It's oftentimes like, hey, I've been running forever and something finally went wrong, and now we're kind of like peeling back the layers versus potentially you with a slightly fresher start. So it's an interesting and I think cool opportunity.
Cool.
Okay, so July 8th, I'd like to hear about like what's basically been happening.
Sure.
Your MPT, that sounds great. What did the initial recovery look like? I'm sure you had to stabilize and totally take it easy for a while. Was any surgical intervention required?
Yeah. So overall, I would say I'm very happy with where we are today versus when it initially happened.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't feel my body. I didn't know if I was paralyzed, didn't know if I was bleeding out.
Yeah.
So just that
Scary.
initial few days were amazing. And then my neurosurgeon, I came in 5 weeks in. I had an ACDF surgery, if you're familiar, where basically they put titanium plates and screws on the front of my neck, which I didn't know they do it that way. Just move my throat to the side and
simple as that, right?
put a neck brace on. And 5 weeks in, I came just to get x-rays and I thought a checkup, but he had told me expect to wear the brace for 12 weeks, a full-on neck brace. And when I came in at 5 weeks, he said, the surgery is what I did is staying there. It's titanium and he screwed it in. It's completely set. He said, I'm not actually going to give you restrictions. Even when I discharged after 5 days from the hospital from the surgery, he said, you can walk. Didn't want me lifting at that point yet. So people at my gym at Collective were surprised to see me show up in the neck brace on the treadmill. And they were like, what are you doing? And I said, I kind of nonchalantly said, I've got an Ironman to train for. But that was the first step, But I think that movement must have I think it would have helped me in the long run of just getting everything flowing, not about everything to tighten up too much.
Yeah, that can be real.
So we only did walking for several weeks, and then I got approved to do a indoor trainer on the bicycle.
Cool.
Which I went lightly at because still leaning over and applying pressure.
Yeah, right.
But it was keeping it in the position where the neck brace was, where I didn't have to hold up with the lack of strength.
Yeah.
But then at 5 weeks, he came in and he took off the brace and he said, you don't need it anymore. The titanium's not going anywhere. And he said, there's no restrictions. And I made a silly decision of going for a run that day. That was at 5 weeks from the surgery. Not because I caused any extra damage, more of just, and not even during, I was elated during it, but that night was one of the most difficult nights of my life.
Yeah.
And I just hadn't realized when a brace is holding everything, as I'm sure you know, I just lost all of the strength in all of these small muscles, and they just got so tired and mad at me and in pain.
I'm sure there were a lot of things that were reacting and cranky.
So I just decided from that point to hold off until what my physical therapist said, which was 12 weeks before they wanted me doing any high impact.
Okay.
and we spent the remaining weeks and months, working on a ton of mobility, and me just learning how everything is so much more than neck. My thoracic is probably causing me more tightness and lack of movement and extension than even I'm almost back to normal, up to 70 degrees on most of these. But my thoracic, which obviously in cycling, especially in an aero position, it's really important for me to be able to look up at the road and be comfortable. So, and I'm sure it's compromising my running form as well.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, cool. And then, did you mention sternal injury?
It also fractured my sternum. I wouldn't say there are any issues to talk about there. Only when I was inflating my lungs in the initial weeks, I would just feel the pressure against it. But they didn't do any surgery. We haven't done any therapy.
Okay.
I would say the biggest lingering thing that came as a surprise to me, not understanding the body, was me learning that C567, the web of nerves, is responsible for the pectoral, the lat. My right side was damaged, and also I had a carotid artery injury here. Mm-hmm. So whatever happened, much more than me, my brain didn't understand how to contract those muscles.
Yeah.
So all of my right side atrophied. So I've actually spent more time in physical therapy working on getting muscle and strength back in my pec, my shoulder, and my lat on my right side.
Yeah.
And it's coming, but that's just taking time.
Okay. Yeah. Out of curiosity on that, do you feel like you're in a phase where now you have regained the connection to those muscles and you're simply bringing them back up to full strength, or is it still kind of a process of?
It's still a process. I would say I'm happy with some of the strength coming back. You will see, I'll take my sweatshirt off and you will see it's still quite obvious that it's not the same as my left side on both the front and the back. But it's not, I don't think it's affecting me too much as a triathlete.
Yeah.
Maybe just in the swimming. I went to Barton Springs, and when I don't have a black line to follow underneath me, Pablo was actually filming me, and I made it a 90-degree turn. Wow. He was like, "Where are you going?" And I was like, I didn't know.
Interesting.
Because I guess if you look at the weights, it's about 4 times as strong on my left side now.
Yeah.
So I'm just unconsciously pulling to that side.
Yeah. Rehab's going well. Definitely still a work in progress. I presume you're going to continue to work with that PT for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, absolutely. I am going to Australia next week for 3 weeks to train with some triathletes.
Okay, cool.
During the summer, I chase the sun, and also there's an Olympic swim coach who's going to give me some one-on-one coaching in a pool.
Okay, right on.
That's my weakness in the 3 sports, and I'm really trying to compete.
Not uncommon,
I'm trying to get there with some of the best athletes in my age group, and that's going to require for me to drop on the swim. The bike I'm very happy with.
Cool.
The run, I think I'm a decent runner.
Yeah.
I don't know how my form is, but in terms of being able to suck it up and do a marathon after 7 hours of work, I'm pretty good with the grit.
Okay.
But I want to work on these things to see how much can we bring that down, maybe from a 3:20, 3:30 marathon towards a 3 or something.
Okay.
Obviously, I know a lot of that is my cardiovascular system, but I think I'm being very inefficient, especially since my injury, and probably wasting a lot of energy.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And I always joke with folks. The injured runner is often the slowest runner, right? So a lot of what we do, luckily, it overlaps a lot. Good running form generally keeps you with lower injury rate and allows you to recover faster. And hopefully, by improving your efficiency, then gives you a performance gain. So a lot of overlap there. Generally, most of the things we're going to be talking about are basically a double whammy for the 2 of those.
Nice.
Because as you increase your volume, it's you're going to be handling a lot. You're going to be putting a lot on your legs, right? The last thing you want is something for the shins to pop up, something for the knee to pop up, right? So, okay, cool. That sounds great.
And just to give you a heads up in where we are April 18 is 4.5 months, so we're at 20 weeks, which typically I have a coach with NVDM, if you know that coaching community.
A little bit, and it's
Natasha started it. So she's one of my coaches, and I have another coach, Alex, and basically we're at a call this week to discuss our game plan.
Yeah.
The entire goal was to get healthy enough so that it's going from where I'm at right now is about 20 to 25 miles of running per week, 3 to 4 times a week, and then add in 3 swims and 3 or 4 bikes, to where at 20 weeks we start increasing the load every single week. The Sunday long runs will go from 6 miles and probably add a mile to get that every week until we get to 20 or 22.
Yeah.
Until the taper. So I think this is a great time to be with you because I feel healthy enough to start pushing, but I want to start pushing in a healthy way.
We're running the risk of overloading you and giving you too much, right?
Sure.
We need things to recover. We need you to be more efficient so that we can get the same amount of work done in less time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the beauty of what we do is in trying to teach you something, you then walk out of the clinic and you incorporate it and you implement it in your own workouts or in your own movement, or most specifically in your own running form to reap the benefit.
Sounds great.
So instead of, oh, here's, like I've got my 20 minutes of RunLab warm up before I go for my run, like it's like, what a pain, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes that's necessary. I'm sure you've learned. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the PT world works that way. Mm-hmm. But ideally, if your running is good running form, instead of creating an imbalance or creating an injury that we then need to fix, you're hopefully sustaining and creating a good, balanced, strong whole system, right?
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. And also, just as a triathlete, a lot of my runs will be coming straight off the bike, where I might not have that time.
Right.
And I also am not going to feel 100%, but that's all what doing this Ironman distance is all about.
Part of the game, right? Yeah.
So I think, like you said, maybe complement some of my work is with this warm-up stuff, and then some of it I just need to get ready to.
You just need to incorporate it, right? Build it into the movement. Okay, sweet. Medically, even if it's something from way back when, other medical issues going on, anything that should be on our radar?
Yeah, I've got 3 pieces of metal in my body. We've got titanium in my neck, which you know about. Uh-huh. I broke my tibia in a motorbike accident in the Philippines 5 years ago. I had the last corrective procedure.
Okay.
This is a flap surgery where they took a third of my calf muscle and put it in the gap that I had here. So I can actually still flex my calf, which is interesting. And before I had these tattoos, they took skin and put it over the top, and they took some bone from my hip.
So they actually moved part of the calf muscle.
So I'm missing a third of this muscle that is the muscle. So
very interesting.
It actually, my orthopedic surgeon said only ever expect 1 to 2 miles, and now I'm running marathons as part of the Ironman. So very happy with where it is. I do feel you will see, if you were to ask me to, let's say, get on, I'm not sure I'd be able to get on my tiptoe on one leg alone.
Yeah.
So the calf strength is compromised, but obviously not at a level that I can't repetitively run for hours.
Okay, gotcha.
But you should definitely know about that.
Okay, gotcha. Pain, or does
not
it
really
give you
pain anymore.
Okay.
When we get back into getting up to 20-mile long runs, I'll probably maybe just get a slight redness, tenderness, inflammation.
Yeah.
But I just listen to myself, put it up, put some ice on it.
Manage it.
One thing you should know about it is there is a lack of range of motion because I snapped my patella tendon. And
that was the same accident?
Yes, exactly. It broke my humerus, snapped the patella, broke my tibial plateau, my tibia, and my fibula.
Hip external rotation.
Okay.
I'm looking for like 45 to 60 degrees here. You're a little tight out here, but you're getting to around that 45 that I want.
Okay.
Hip internal rotation, where we find your brick wall. I'm looking for more like 30 to 45.
Oh, wow.
And you're kind of giving me like 10. We started with like 0. And then we've kind of worked our way out to about a 10 here.
So we have some
I'd like to work a little bit more there. Luckily, the good news is, now that you're not playing soccer anymore, most of your movement is going to be straightforward. But we're 3D creatures. We certainly need to operate in 3D. We're not going to be truly like Terminator straight, right? And oftentimes we run into trouble if you are trying to get your body to operate that way.
Okay.
So some of that motion will likely be beneficial for us.
Can you tell me with that internal, how that helps with my running? Like how that's related?
Yes. Basically, I would expect you're going to need most of that internal rotation motion as you are absorbing or managing force. So imagine your leg touches down on the ground in front of you. So back leg's up in the air. You just touched down on the ground. As we catch ourselves there's a number of things that I want to happen so that you dissipate that force over
Got
a little bit more time through a few different muscles, through a few different joints. And because we're 3D, right, which depending on how into physics you are, we can get a little bit more into the weeds. One of those motions is that your pelvis and your upper body is going to rotate across and towards that leg here. This position, while my leg's on the ground, so of course I'm showing you while your leg's up in the air, but while your leg's on the ground, this motion is hip internal rotation.
Got it.
So when you're on the soccer field, anytime you're changing direction, we need a ton of that as well, but a little bit on every single stride, especially if you're starting to get tired, you're dipping more into that motion. I want it to be good and fluid as you dip into that position instead of the brick wall that we're running into right now. Exactly, because then if we run into the rigid, that shock is hitting us
just
a little bit more forcefully.
Impact.
Yep. So we'd still work
Maybe
a little
20 instead of 10.
Yeah, exactly. We'd work a little bit more on this one as well, especially making sure that it's nice and fluid under control. And then maybe just a smidge tighter on this side, but still ultimately getting where I want you to. Okay. How does this feel on this side?
Fine.
Okay.
I feel similar feeling on the right side and the internal.
Okay.
The other way was fine.
Okay, cool. And then I'll go back to the other leg to compare these ones side by side. So this is testing your hamstring length. I'd like to get a little bit more from you. Believe it or not as much hamstring flexibility required for most running as you might think.
Okay.
Kind of depends on how you use it. So I'd like you to get a little bit more. You're getting to about 45 degrees. I'd like you to get to about here.
Okay.
This being
90.
0. Yeah, or 90, whichever
Okay.
one you want to call it. So I'm looking for like 15 more there, which we can work on. But again, people often assume more flexibility is better. For running, as soon as you give yourself that flexibility, it's motion that you need to control, which is, it's a double-edged sword, right?
Don't want it to open up too much.
Yeah, especially if you don't have good strength or control over it. So people talk a little bit more these days and a little bit less motion here. So not even quite getting to 45. How's that feel on this side?
It's fine.
It's tight.
Just a little tighter.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
I will say, I'll be honest with you, I've focused so much of my work on my upper body since the injury that I've been a little lazy or negligent.
Yeah.
So that's probably why you're feeling even more tightness than I probably would have been earlier this year.
Makes sense. Yeah, not unreasonable. Hopefully, with the right routine or the right movement, we can efficiently tag all of that. Okay.
Yeah, and I think as I get healthier, that gives me a little more time to focus on my whole body.
Totally. Yeah, right. The urgency for the upper body and neck goes down a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. All right, so while you're laying here relaxed, you'll notice I can bring your feet together and we've still got a gap between your knees. This is just your structure. We call it a varum. So you and I are built similarly in that regard.
Does that mean we bow out?
We bow out a little bit, exactly. Sometimes a component of that is coming from the thigh bone. Sometimes a component of that is from the knee. Sometimes a component of
just
that
the way that we're
from the
shaped.
bones. Exactly.
We can't do anything about that.
Yep. Yeah. So to an extent, right? I'm not gonna change the bones, right? It changes how we are best going to compensate for this anatomy. It also means kind of six of one, half dozen of another. We have higher injury risk in some regards, and then lower injury risk in others. Especially compared to somebody, let's say the opposite, one of the folks who's like kind of knock-kneed. We are bowing out the opposite direction. It changes where the force goes when we touch the ground to an extent, and therefore to manage that force, we're probably going to do a slightly different flavor than somebody else. And even when we are perfect, we're not going to quite line up exactly like one of those folks who's knock-kneed or somebody who's dead on straight.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
I do notice the outside back of my shoe is always the first to go.
Yeah,
so
right.
That makes sense because we're on the outside.
Yeah, exactly. Right. We're more likely to land there by default. Now, I don't want you, for example, to lean further into that pattern or to exaggerate that pattern, because you can imagine if we keep landing more and more on the outside edge of our foot and sending more and more force through the outside edge of this leg, those things might get overloaded, right? So we'll talk about, we'll dig a little bit more into the weeds about like what that actually looks like in the motion. But basically it changes how we want to compensate, if you will, to adjust for our body in that way. Cool. You will also notice, if I'm looking at your knee here, when your knee is pointed straight up and I hold your ankle in its neutral position, they pretty much point in the same direction.
So good.
If anything, when your knee goes straight, your foot might even want to come in slightly, but again, that's when your ankle is in its neutral position.
Okay.
What I'm trying to get at here is basically the shape of your shin bone, the shape of your tibia. Now, this tibia obviously has a history, might have changed slightly either during the course of the corrections or as it healed, right? Impossible for us to say because I didn't know what it looked like before, but this is what we got now, right? So you are pretty much aligned, or your foot wants to go slightly in even when your knee is going forward. So we've essentially ended up with what we call an internal tibial torsion.
Okay.
So from here down to here, it essentially spirals as it comes down, like one of those roller coasters that takes you upside down, and it points the foot in a tiny bit.
Got it.
It's mostly straight, right? It's nothing super crazy. But this means on your right side, and we'll check out lefty in a second, it's almost like you have a slight in-toeing, even when your knee is going straight.
Okay. Is that common given that I bow out as well?
Yeah. Those are slightly separate, but oftentimes related.
Okay.
Yeah. So now, we've got this aspect for the left-right, the bow part, and we've got this aspect for the twisty part, your foot and ankle, and potentially matters the most for your footwear.
Okay.
So you can notice here, if you try and stay fully relaxed for me, if we squish your foot down and your arch down, you can see now I can kind of get the toes to point outward while the knee points up. If we keep a really high arch and keep the foot really flexed, really strong, really engaged through the foot and through the big toe, if you will, now while the knee is pointed forward, it's almost like you start to curl more in.
Do we want that or no?
Our goal to an extent is to largely get these aligned.
Straight.
Close-ish to straight, or sometimes even having the toe slightly out. This gives you a little bit of a challenge on this side, and it does make me curious if it's one of the downstream effects of this tibia healing or as it got repaired, if you end up with a little bit more of this torsion towards the inside, and it gives this foot and ankle, maybe this shin, a little bit more to deal with as it tries to get these things aligned. Because you can imagine, if we put your toes forward, now your knee's slightly off to the side. If we direct your knee forward, now we're kind of pigeon-toeing in a little bit.
So
we're going to try to find the happy medium, exactly. Or, oftentimes what is the case, foot and ankle, because it has more motion available to it, more freedom available to it, it is better at compensating for this. Whereas the knee, a little bit more like a pure hinge, we want to take that and get it forward, prioritize the knee, do our best to compensate with the foot and ankle appropriately.
Cool.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Now you can imagine, so I mentioned the footwear, right? We'll get into it later.
What's best for me?
Oftentimes matters less than people give it credit for, but if we jam some crazy arch support underneath you here, it's like, oh, this guy's arch is running low or whatever, I see that you pronate too much, and we jam some crazy arch support underneath there. Now we've essentially limited your ability to flatten and squish to get these things aligned. So sometimes we see trouble if we have aggressive orthotics, or if we just look at one piece instead of seeing how it affects up the chain.
Been through trauma typically act a similar way, or is it common to have two people with two different legs even though they didn't have an injury?
Yeah, good question. A little bit of difference is pretty common. It's pretty typical.
Interesting.
I really wish I understood why, but oftentimes if somebody has a slight out-toeing because of their tibia on the right leg, the left leg is a little bit more in, and you're the reverse of that. And that's what makes me suspect that it's based on this shin bone injury, this tibia injury, or the repair, because oftentimes people do the reverse of that. You right-handed?
I'm left-handed, actually. That was going to be my next comment.
Now that
And with soccer,
I wish I had enough data to like really start to piece that together.
Yeah.
Because obviously most folks are right-handed.
Maybe
Most
that's
folks
why
follow
I
that
was
rule. Yeah, you might be opposite to that reason.
You have to understand how things are up here.
Oh no, do that there, touch them toe, earthquake with it. No, do that there, touch them toe, earthquake. Oh no, do that there, touch them toe, earthquake with it. No, do that there, touch them toe,
I don't necessarily need you to be the most flexible in your hamstrings. It kind of depends on how fast you want to go.
Sure.
And how you utilize that flexibility. So you can imagine, if on every single stride you did this big kick or you did this big V-skip motion, your hamstrings would probably get pretty flexible.
Right.
If you never open up your stride or if you never run fast, then you don't really need as much flexibility.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So within training, people for a long time have talked about this thing they call the principle of specificity. It basically means your body will generally adapt to whatever challenge you give it. To an extent, right? There's a couple caveats to that, right? Hitting your head against the wall doesn't necessarily make you any better, but if you ask your body for a certain motion, you ask the muscle to stretch and work in a certain position, it usually accommodates that and it adapts to that, right?
Nice.
Usually, that's for the better. There's a couple of cases where it's not necessarily the most productive, but without getting too in the weeds, when we see tightness or a limitation or a weakness in a test or on the table, it usually tells me about how you're moving.
Right.
It's less often that the tightness causes you to run a certain way. It's often that how you run causes the tightness. There's certainly exceptions to that. You've got an old injury. You've got an old repair, right? Your body's not necessarily starting with a totally blank slate.
Right.
So there's certainly exceptions to that.
Cool. Yeah, I'd also love us to focus on my upper body quite a bit as well, because I know I have difficulty with my arm swinging. It's just very stiff, and I really want to learn how to relax to be more efficient.
Yeah.
Just be in sync with my legs and my breath.
In sync with the legs and with the breath. I like that emphasis a little bit more than just zooming in on the arms.
Yeah.
We'll elaborate on. Can I ask how much of that is since the surgery versus how much has been running even prior?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I've always been a bit stiff.
Yeah.
I think maybe from a strength background as well, but definitely increased another 20-30% just because of the neck injury. Everything just feels like it doesn't want to relax.
A little bit more washing,
Understandably.
a little more washing machine on the
Yeah,
left
definitely.
foot. Yeah, makes sense. Yep. Yep, that makes sense. But I really like what you said about being in sync with the breath and with the legs. That is oftentimes the part that we kind of overlook. It's like, oh, this dude needs to fix the arm thing. It's like, well, fix the legs, sometimes the arms take care of themselves.
Okay, cool.
All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Thumb up. Let's see how rotation still. This 8. Go over 4. The leg moving. Good. More. 7:30 pace. Feel all right?
Yep.
Cool. 8. Plus or 7.
Okay, that's good.
Give that a go. And walk it off. Good stuff.
Yeah, cool.
Looking good. That's okay.
Good. If you needed to go quicker for any reason, I'm okay with that as well.
Okay, cool. I'm happy with that for now, especially since that's not terribly far off from. So we're pretty much at a wrap today.
Sweet.
Keep an eye on your email. Whatever you've got on file, we'll send the videos your way.
Okay.
We'll send the video analysis and the written report. We've modified it a little bit. Call it the movement analysis profile.
Okay.
Which essentially looks something like this. I mentioned those gauges or those meters. It'll talk about some of the anatomy things that we talked about today. It'll talk about some of the flexibility things that we talked about today. And then this will be based on the actual running analysis.
Awesome.
Now, obviously, there's a lot of info. Dig into it, nerd out about it if you want. There's
But we're gonna talk
there's
about
some
it.
jargon in here, right? You know, that I don't necessarily need you overly fixated on all the angles, all the numbers. Take a glance at the analysis video so you can kind of see what we're talking about. That puts some meat on the bones. And then perhaps most importantly, how we're actually going to put it all together and how we're going to start working on it, how we're going to try and change those numbers and change those meters at the follow-up appointment when we see you next.
All right, Mike, my name's Colby, and I'll be doing this gait analysis video breakdown for you here today. So this will just be a quick breakdown of your running mechanics and going through the video footage that we took of you there on the treadmill recently. You see yourself on the left side of the screen there running in slow motion, right? So we filmed you at a couple different speeds from the front and back and both sides, and we'll just take a 360-degree view look at your movement and break down your running form through what we look at as 8 key phases of the running gait cycle. So this movement analysis profile report on the right side of the screen uses these dials to show in red or yellow where there's some limiters and in green where things look good. Primarily for you today, we're focused on these first 3 sections. After that, the last 5 phases don't really have any sort of injury risk, and they're mostly green. So for the most part, I want you to keep in mind, it's not like we're trying to teach you an entirely new way to run, make any big changes, but again, implement some exercises and some awareness towards where we think you have some weaknesses showing up. As far as your structure and your range of motion, just a couple of things we take into account before looking at how you actually run. As we look at your foot, your knee, your tibia, your hip, structurally, I want you to understand anything here in yellow in this section doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing, just something outside of neutral that we need to know about, right? So we do see you have a little bit of varus in your knees, some internal torsion, some varus in the tibias, and some anteversion in the hips. All of those things are normal, just make up your unique structure, and we don't really need to go into too much detail on kind of what those things are. Now let's get to the good stuff, and it's the first phase of the running gait cycle, the moment of contact. This is where we're going to look at we have some asymmetries between the left and the right. You have kind of completely different contact points on the left and the right, at least on this particular day. So on your left foot, you're landing on the forefoot, okay? On your right foot, you're landing on the heel. If you look at your stepping through and look at that heel strike right there, there's your right foot, there's your left foot. So both sides have a pretty large lateral foot contact angle. Okay, 15 degrees, we want to keep that under 10 degrees, landing at a large angle of supination. You see that over here in the gait retraining recommendations, decreased angle of lateral contact. And we also see a moderate risk in regards to frames of retraction on the left side. Let's go here to the video. Let's kind of break it down. So let's talk about the differences in the foot strikes here first. So let's zoom in, right? So again, just with whatever pain you're dealing with, whatever's going on is leading to totally different contacts. And we want to get you to honestly find more of a midpoint between these two because on your left foot here, you're kind of out onto the forefoot. Here's your contact point. On the right foot here, you're kind of just onto the heel. Ideally, I'd like to see you kind of land more through the midfoot. And so kind of having your contact point more right through here. I guess for you, I think it would be a good to kind of think of it as a full foot contact on both sides, right? Because, and kind of getting down to the bottom of why this might happen, and we'll figure out in these follow-up sessions, but you're kind of reaching for the ground, nose diving here with your left foot, and then doing the opposite as you're landing with the toes pointed up on the right foot, right? So that's kind of showing the difference in the angle of kind of from the heel to the toe, angling down on this side, angling up on this side, contact point kind of coming through the heel on this side, and contact point coming through the forefoot on the left foot. When you do land on the forefoot, again, maybe this is slightly different running on the treadmill versus outside, has you reaching a little bit more, but when you're landing a little bit too far out in front of your body, and we're at a little bit of a weird angle, but right here, this is your contact point, and it should be kind of closer to your chest. I would say that contact point should be like right underneath your nose. So the distance between these two lines shows how much you're kind of overreaching as you're reaching for that forefoot. It's more about the distance of where that forefoot contact is at in relationship to the hip. It's too far out in front of the hip, but trying to get that alignment of contacting closer to you. And again, part of it is because you're kind of reaching for that forefoot a little bit. So you can see here, this right side isn't reaching out as far, and you are landing with your contact point a lot closer to your hips. Different, again, forefoot strike on the left, heel strike on the right, mildly overstriding on the left as a result. But let's not talk about that lateral foot contact angle, because this is on both sides at the point of contact. Let's go here with, this is what I think is something that's kind of holding you back, is you have this tendency to really land pretty far supinated, where you hit to that lateral foot with this angle on this is about 20 degrees, right? So this is just, I think, too much space underneath the big toe, a little bit too aggressive of an angle of supination, right? So again, as I mentioned, kind of a full foot contact, it's also about getting that big toe closer to the ground as well. It's not that you can't land completely on, it's not that you need to avoid the lateral foot completely, excuse me, but it's this, I think, is too aggressive of an angle, again, coupled with the other aspects we're talking about with that. So paying attention to this lateral angle that funnels more initial jolt of the ground reaction force up the lateral leg and into the hip, but then kind of puts more pressure on having the lower leg have to control that pronation rolling in, because you land so supinated. And just for the distances that you run, I think this will be, and at this speed, a little too aggressive of a lateral foot angle. So now the next section is going to relate to kind of what we talked about with, again, the asymmetries here. We're going to see this issue on the right side with decreased knee flexion in the landing and loading response. And we're also going to see then decreased hip stability on the left side with a contralateral hip drop of 6 degrees, and kind of some lateral flexion on the right side. So I want to talk about those things all together. I want to bring back up the side view again real quick. So what we actually look at is you're not quite able to flex and land and load through that right knee. You're super stiff through your right knee. Once you land, kind of the amount of bend that you have at the time that you land, there's not much change from that position to that position. There's not much loading. There's not a deformation coming down as much as what there's a range of where you want to be, right? You don't want to collapse down too far, but if this is more of an ideal amount of flexion and bend in the knee and the hip and the ankle coming down and bending, and you can see that a little bit. This is more ideal. So you can have kind of the left side to compare to the right side. We have this angle here, 136, which is representative of about 44 degrees, and over here about 52, right? So about 16 degrees decrease knee flexion. That right side is super stiff right now, not able to flex. We need to be able to squat down and to have the decrease your pain, if that's what's limiting you from the ability to do that. Work on absorption and eccentric strength, again, the ability to control your body coming down, right? So if you're not able to control the motion coming down as you load that leg, you're not going to get the same energy to push off and extend, right? Thinking about your leg as a spring, right? This is a spring that's not getting loaded, versus this left side, you're able to compress down to kind of load that spring, that connective tissue, and that kind of gives you a lot more free energy return on the back end to push off. But again, that imbalance then is, I think, you're not really loading onto this right leg. I think you're then slamming into the ground and loading harder onto the left leg as a compensation for that. So that kind of leads into this next issue with the hip drop. So as we're looking at you from here, from the back, because you're not even quite loading onto this right leg, your hip doesn't really take much load either. But then when you go to your left leg, as you're able to flex down onto that side, you're also going to see a lot more shift in the hip, because you're loading onto that side, onto that left leg, and that hip's not quite able to handle it. So that's where we see that left-sided hip drop. As you're on your left side, that hip drops. But again, I think it is going to be working on what's happening on the right side. And we need to work on stuff at the right hip as well. That's going to help to stabilize on the left. But if you look at when you're on your right leg, the hip stays closer to level here at the pelvis, but you kind of see yourself leaning into this side. You see that upper body shift this way as your weight bearing on your right leg. Then you'll shift onto your left leg, and there's not as much lean. You're more upright through the upper body, but again, it's the hip that shifts. So again, some differences that we need to kind of work on. It doesn't just mean this left side is weak, but that's kind of where the hip drop is occurring here on this um, section. Something we can pay attention to. Looking at that rear view, looking at your stability in your pelvis and your lateral torso flexion, and from the left to the right, trying not to lean too much into this side, and trying to stabilize the hip. We also have some footage here with you with your shoes off, totally barefoot, but it looks good in your shoes as well. But after that large angle of supination as you land, you don't over collapse down too far. There's more initial kind of just very quick pronation, but overall, this is right where you need to be. A pronation issue would be collapsing to the inside. A supination issue would be pushed to the outside at this point. So that looks good, and then you roll through to heel off and toe off, and then push off really well. We'll also see here on the left, really good pronation, supination control, rolling through to heel off, toe off, and push off. So something that again, that's what we see through those three phases. The last thing to touch on is a little bit of what's best described as a lateral foot push off. And it occurs more for you actually at the faster speeds when you're in shoes. And so I just want to bring that up. You'll see here in the report, it's not necessarily an injury risk. And I think it's really a big part of what we really need to do is focus on the lateral foot contact, because you land so far onto your lateral foot that you kind of keep your weight shifted through your lateral foot, and you're stepping just a little bit narrow as a result of that. And so then when you go to push off, you kind of spin off the lateral side of the foot just a little bit more, and you see your foot kind of turn. So really, I think we just need to work on the contact point and not necessarily the propulsion. But what you'll notice here is I would kind of look at this, and we see from the hip to the foot, you're kind of pushing across your body behind you. Kind of look at your midline here. You push that foot kind of across this way. So you're just pushing and flicking from the lateral foot a little bit. And you'll see the same thing here. A little worse on that right hip, but again, it comes across on the left as well. But again, that right side, that pushes across more because you're working to try to push a lot harder because of the issues we talked about of not loading into that knee. But again, you see that foot just turn a little bit. So that's the lesser of your issues compared to other things, but that's kind of the final thing to cover. The last phase of the running gait cycle is the swing phase, right? So we started off with the moment of contact and worked our way through till the push off. Well, when you run, you should be spending slightly more time in the air than on the ground. And so you're getting a good stride length and flight time. Good lift of your foot coming up nice and high off the ground. Keeping that foot straight at this point as you drive through with good knee drive and decent hip flexion. Pretty good upper body rotation here. A little bit low through the arms. One thing I wanted to touch on in the swing is the arms. I will say maybe they come out a little bit out in front of you here as you kind of punch forward. I'd like to see that hand kind of punch maybe a little bit down and then stay closer to your body and come up, versus keeping this forearm and pushing out forward. So that's one thing I would think about, is trying to keep the hand from coming too far out in front of your body. The last thing here to summarize is what I just talked about and kind of explains where we're going to go from here. Your biggest limiter is, again, the increased lateral foot contact angle. And then we have the decreased knee flexion during loading on the right and the contralateral hip drop on the left. That's how it's best summarized. But again, we talked about some other aspects of it, of landing and moderately overstriding, right? And then having some lateral flexion on the right as a part of the decreased flexion, as well as then some of that lateral foot push off. So there's some other smaller things, but the biggest limiters, concisely kind of summarized, is lateral foot angle on both sides, decreased knee flexion on right, hip drop on left, just getting you balanced out. So as part of your overall plan, when you come back in, we're going to implement some exercises and drills and some cues geared towards the things I just talked about. So appreciate you taking the time, and have a great day. Bye.